This is expected to happen. A second impeachment. Donald Trump would become the only president in U.S. history to be impeached twice during his term. Let's bring in Republican strategist Cory Crowley, who is in Washington, D.C. today. Hey, Cory, good to see you.
Yeah, glad to be back with you.
Okay, so what's going to happen here? Give us your prediction.
Yeah, well, the House is going to vote to impeach, whether that happens today, tomorrow, or by the end of the week. There was some talk earlier today that Mitch McConnell might bring the Senate back in emergency session as early as Friday to begin the trial. It now sounds like that's unlikely to happen. And now, that puts Democrats in an awkward position because they have to decide, do they want to send these articles of impeachment over to the Senate immediately and have this potentially dominate the first several days, several weeks of the Biden administration? Or does Nancy Pelosi want to hang on to them, as is her prerogative, and send them over to the Senate in, say, a few weeks, a few months after Joe Biden's had a chance to come out of the gate and pass some of his big policy, procedures that he wants to get done?
Cory, the front page of the New York Times saying that GOP leaders begin to break with Trump. And I'm just curious what you think that's actually going to mean. When we say that, will there be enough, do you think, to actually convict him?
Well, I think what Mitch McConnell does is going to be the best indicator of that. If Mitch had brought the Senate back on Friday, he would have only done it knowing that he had the 67 votes necessary to actually remove the president. I think that he isn't bringing them back is a clear indication that they're not to that number yet. There are, of course, reports out today that McConnell himself, the Republican leader in the Senate, is at least not going to stand in the way of removing the president if that were to come up, or convicting him if it's after the inauguration on the 20th. But we're going to have to see if a little bit more of the dam breaks with Republican senators. We're just not quite there yet. We need 17 to 18 of them to agree to come over and vote to convict. And at this point, I think that it's really only halfway there.
We're watching live proceedings from the House, Cory, and I know you worked at Congress for many years and you're very familiar with what goes on. What is the process like, over the next couple of hours? What are we going to see here as we move toward this vote?
Well, I think the main point is that this vote is a foregone conclusion. The votes exist even if they happened on party lines to impeach the president, much like happened just about a year ago. But we already know that a half dozen to a dozen Republican members of the House are going to vote with the Democrats this time. It'll be a bipartisan impeachment. And so really what you see now is just messaging. Members trying to position themselves either for the Republican base, if they're Republicans, or as centrist Republicans that are going with the Democrats here. And of course, Democrats trying to make their point strongly about the seditious acts they view this president as having provoked, and about the right. And I think also about trying to make sure that this doesn't happen again in the next few days as we come up to the inauguration and are, of course, bracing for the potential of more violence.
As a Republican who has never been a fan of Donald Trump yourself, I'm curious whether you support what they're doing. Does it make sense to you that they impeach him for a second time?
It does, especially if they think the votes could potentially be there for the Senate to actually take action and punish him afterwards. I don't buy into this narrative that it somehow further divides the country to hold people responsible for what they've done and their actions. Nobody would have argued after the Civil War that we should have just let every seditious general run free in the country and continue causing trouble. And the same is true for events throughout history. You only stop this action from happening again if you hold people accountable. And, the Capitol was sieged for the first time in 208 years. That is not an insignificant fact. That is not something that can be walked away from quickly or that can be forgotten.
What does it mean for your party? I mean, this impeachment and, possibly a vote to convict, who knows? But, as you see Republicans basically now being asked a very simple question. You're either with Trump or you're not.
Yeah, and I think, the flip side of that question is you're either for America and the rule of law or you're not.